Do you guys know what I hate? Filler. When TV shows have the blessing of their broadcaster to be allocated certain time slots over the course of several weeks, sometimes there are episodes that must exist for the continuation of the plot but don't actually add anything of substance to what had previously been established. The Ghost Monument is a perfect example of this, as 3 things were left unestablished in The Woman Who Fell to Earth. Firstly, the opening title sequence would have to be shown. Secondly, our characters need to move from being in space to the TARDIS by the end of the story. And finally reveal what new design for the interior has been conjured up for this year's series. The episode succeeds in doing these things, but at the cost of having a story that has no real reason to exist. As we did with episode 1, let's pick apart the latest episode of this show and find out if it was worth watching or not. The title sequence is a visual feast, no doubt about that. It's cool that it pulsates and transforms into the universe rushing past us, giving it a more organic feel with its mysterious evolving patterns and shapes. I also liked that the theme music, like the score of this series so far, was less dramatic and more atmospheric. The episode then picks up where we left off, except that our protagonists are miraculously scooped by 2 competing space travelers. I think the only thing this sequence needed was another shot that established there were 2 ships picking them up and not just 1. I was left quite confused as to why the group had been divided in the first place, and then to have them all wake up on 2 separate ships that have almost entirely identical interiors is bound to throw anybody off. So the first ship lands on the planet Desolation and Angstrom starts wandering off, and then this happens.
Where you going?
I need to survey the atmospheric data!
You what, mate? You get off your ship, stand there for a bit and take some good deep breaths, and then decide you want to check the atmosphere? Another thing, this planet has 3 suns, right? Yet everything on the surface just has 1 shadow. Things get even weirder though when the Doctor and Yaz's ship starts heading towards Desolation 2. We can see how rapidly the ship is heading towards the planet because it has turned from a speck of light in the sky to being seriously close to the other 3 in very little time at all. Mere seconds after this is established though, the ship has slowed down to a snail's pace, giving those on the ground the ability to run away from it. It also shows them having enough time for Ryan to trip, have him helped up, and jump over the hill to the right, which logically they should have just done in the first place. We don't even fully see this final step, by the way. They just brace themselves for death, then it cuts to the ship rumbling along the ground, and then again when they appear at the top of the hill. The best part though, only when they're trying to get Ryan up off the floor does the Doctor suddenly decide to slow the ship down. It's too bloody late for that, love! This totally nonsensical waste of an action sequence is just the start of how tragically disappointing this episode was. So after the big happy reunion with No Bones Broken, the Doctor hands Graham some sunglasses for his eyes. Now, I think he looks pretty cool in them, not gonna lie, but how the sunglasses even managed to make it here astounds me. You know how in the previous episode she changed her clothes and made a big deal out of having empty pockets? In the desert, she pulls out these sunglasses that she could have just as easily have bought with the outfit, right? Wrong. She gives this explanation that they belonged to Pythagoras. So are we to assume she went off on an adventure between getting changed into these clothes and teleporting into outer space? Or maybe she was hiding them in an even more sinister place.
But that's a compact
Sonic glasses.
Where were you hiding that?
You really don't want to know.
When they get to the tent, Graham asks the age-old Doctor Who question of, why do the aliens understand us? And I thought, hey, she's going to be like, I don't know, but we at home will know because the TARDIS is going to be nearby, right? Instead, we need more lights flashing under the skin to explain this. Graham does rightfully question why aliens keep injecting the protagonists all the time, but once again, Chibnall fills Jodie's mouth with needless explanations of things that are so blatantly apparent to the audience. Fortunately, when they enter the tent, things picked up a bit. For one thing, Jodie doesn't quite seem to stop stop talking, but at least here we get some context for exactly what's going on. Earth and humans are of such insignificance to these futuristic people that they don't even know who they are or where they came from. Forget mocking them for their weakness or cowering in fear of humanity, they've just got their eyes on the prize, making their motivations clear and simple to us. More to the point, the Doctor's persistence does become more level-headed, enough to convince Illyn, this random Jabba the Hutt character, to show her the Ghost Monument, which, like we all expected, turns out to be the TARDIS. They set sail across the scary microbe-infested water that ultimately amounts to nothing.
This entire planet has been made cruel.
Anybody else bothered by the fact they just recycled the shot of the boat on the water, but in the second one they just moved it further away after that dreary and pointless conversation? The one about Epso falling from the tree, where he just learned to love his mum because she made him realise not to trust anyone? I think it would have been more interesting if he concluded the story with, "I killed her a few months later, never trust anyone," because then the characters and the audience would actually feel threatened by him. In fact, most of his interactions with the other characters involve him getting a verbal backhand just to show how superior their morals and intellects are. The best part of this was when the Doctor just put her finger on his throat to shut him up temporarily. Why didn't he just shoot her after she did that to him? It's not like the pair had anything to gain by having those four tag along. Our other space chaser now has the chance to tell her story of sadness and depression. Thankfully, she has an actual reason for wanting the money, to save her family. The best part about this, though, is that this is Yaz's cue to talk about how sad her family life is too.
My dad drives me bananas and my sister's trying to get me to move out so she can have my bedroom.
Yasmin Khan, the perfect person to have around in a crisis. Sorry, it's just really funny that she just basically gets ignored throughout the majority of this episode, apart from this point. So our group make it to the second obstacle, where some of the most face-palming moments take place. First and foremost, we have this laser trap on the stairs that Epso climbs that makes these pointless robots appear from nowhere. Not only is the laser on the floor not even present in the previous shot, but the robots don't even bother attacking anybody until Epso shoots one of them. Oh, come on, this is just Star Wars levels of inaccuracy. Only difference is that I'm willing to forgive Imperial Stormtroopers on the grounds that they are just people with limited visibility under those clunky helmets. These are bloody robots! Just look at how close our characters get to some of these killers, and by what I assume is just pure divine intervention, none of them get harmed. Well, except for Twatty, who gets his arm shot. But if you were surprised that moment riled me up, you know what's coming next, don't you?
Sorry. Call of Duty, man. I've trained for this.
I quite liked Ryan in the previous episode, but he's basically said nothing up until this point in episode 2, and then he goes out there, once again proving just how little tension and danger there is in this story for our characters. This moment throws all of the development of Ryan's character out the window. It was mere hours ago you were grieving over your nan's death, and now you're gonna go and throw yourself to the wolves because you played Call of Duty? The only way I can make sense of this is the idea that he now has nothing to lose with just his father left for family. Right, fine. But to watch Ryan do something this stupid and conveniently wriggle out of death's clutches like this, I can't let that slide. Thankfully, the Doctor ends this cringe fest by launching an EMP, disabling all the robots. Down in the tunnels, though, things get even more annoying. So, what's the first obstacle blocking our character's path? A big locked door.
I love a big locked door.
Let me guess, you're gonna just open it with your sonic screwdriver? Wow, it might as well not have even been there. It isn't even there at all. We don't even see it! I guess the budget for this episode was blown on that ridiculous chase scene at the beginning of the episode. This is also apparent by how pathetic the quote-unquote antagonist of this episode is. We are introduced to this thing earlier with shots like this one. Fine, fair enough, but the payoff is just terrible. When I heard that they were doing away with all the classic enemies of Doctor Who for Series 11, I was fine and dandy with the idea. Until until this thing came along. We see it slowly moving towards Epso whilst he's napping. How the hell did he make it this far into the competition if he puts himself in compromising situations like this all the time?
He can nap anywhere.
Meanwhile, the Dr. Graham and Ms. Forgettable Widow find a room where they can establish what happened to life on this planet. Fortunately, they find a massive suicide note on the floor written in this alien language that the Doctor can conveniently read. Hang on, I thought the whole gang had translator chips put in the backs of their necks. So the Doctor can read it, and Graham can't? The plot doesn't linger on this irritating decision for too long though, as they do need to do some more running. Like the cliche hasn't been used to death already. The showrunners are fully aware of this with the dialogue though, and yet they still persist in using it to advance the plot. Well, we do need to stop running for a bit though. That way we can have some more exposition from the Doctor to establish that the air is running thin. Again, how could she possibly know this to be the case? We not only stop for that, but also to continue the dissolving of Ryan's character, where they make a huge thing out of him not liking ladders. You climb ladders in Call of Duty, Ryan! Oh my god. I kept thinking throughout this episode, Jesus, Graham's really fit for his age. He's done all this running around, climbing ladders, and he just takes it like a champ. But I thought right here that the characters would have a bit of sympathy for the old man. Maybe the Doctor might have had some regrets for bringing him on this perilous journey. She has been old before, you know. But no, it's all about Ryan's insecurity with ladders. Why they're making him out to be this pathetic weasel in this episode, I do not know. After all of this painful experience, we arrive at the location of the Ghost Monument, which just happens to be pouring out acetylene. Maybe I didn't pay enough attention in chemistry class, or it's just common knowledge for normal people, but I had no idea that this chemical compound was even real until I googled it afterwards. So sure enough, it does make sense and does prove that one of the side characters wasn't a complete waste of time. However, the voice of the cloth is just funny as hell, and its cryptic prophecy was entirely lost on me. Ooh, something bad is going to happen to the Doctor. Like we haven't heard that before. It actually reminded me of Aldia from the game Dark Souls 2. No, bear with me here. Why I mention this is important because he too, in the game, makes bold claims about the main protagonist.
Then accept the fate of your ilk and face the trials that await you.
We see what's hidden, even from yourself, the outcast, abandoned and unknown.
To add to this, both monsters are completely unnecessary to both stories. The two side characters then proclaim themselves as joint winners before Ilin. He doesn't like it at first, understandably, but for some reason, even though he's a hologram, he allows the victory after they both attempt to intimidate him. What a bloody pushover! Some more snapping of the fingers takes place and the four are returned to square one, stranded in space. We all know that's only going to last a mere minute or two, don't we, boys and girls? The TARDIS, again, miraculous divine intervention, you've caught my drift by now, appears just at the right moment. Just because we need to fulfill the criteria I laid out at the beginning of the review. The interior of the TARDIS looks like a cave. That's all I have to say on the matter, because I really don't give a monkeys. As long as it still travels in time and space, I really do not care. This part right here should have been at the end of The Woman Who Fell to Earth, in my opinion. Instead of forcing the audience through a 45-minute non-adventure, last week's episode should have ended with them all materializing inside the TARDIS instead. So, did it suck? Right now, I feel like Chris Chibnall just showed up at my house with some beautiful china plates as a gift for me with a bright smile on his face and then just smashed them all over my kitchen floor. This episode was so tragically boring, pointless and frustrating that I have now been surprised twice in a row. Maybe I set my expectations too high, but the thought of the characters going on a perilous journey to find the TARDIS actually excited me. But this quote-unquote perilous journey basically had nothing to do with our main characters. They were essentially dragged, kicking and screaming by these two nothing side characters, with the same goal but different intentions. I can only praise the final scene for being essentially what should have been at the end of the first episode, and some of the visuals throughout were good, I guess. I'll admit, I'm really growing to Graham as a character, but that was at the cost of making the younger companions look like little children. action, without an engaging story to carry those essential elements, leaves me severely disappointed. I give The Ghost Monument a 2 out of 10. Whew, thanks for watching, guys. Rosa Parks next episode. What do we think? Train wreck or potential 10 out of 10? Leave your comments below or on the Discord server where we have a live discussion of each episode every Sunday night. I'll see you all there.